Wonderful. So if you're joining us, if you're able to get in, um, please let us know where you're calling from, where you're joining us from today. I'm really excited to have you here. Welcome. Wonderful. So we are having some technical difficulties, and so we'll be recording this in case you cannot get in. Um, so thank you so much for joining today. And we're here to discuss leading at the speed of people, what great leaders know and most miss. Imagine showing up to work calm, confident, and clear. You know who you are, you trust your instincts, you communicate effectively, even under pressure. You manage your emotions well, and you lead with presence, influence, and purpose. Sounds good, doesn't it? Well, the reality is that for so many leaders, that version of leadership feels out of reach. Leaders today are facing a myriad of challenges. They're caught in chaos and overwhelm, silenced by self doubt and imposter feelings. They're unsure how to lead people through complexity and conflict, let alone how to care for themselves along the way. They also feel stressed out and alone. And hey, I know that feeling. When I started my healthcare career more than 30 years ago, I took a job as a mental health technician on an adolescent unit in a psychiatric facility while I was attending nursing school. And I loved it. I loved the work and I absolutely loved the kids. I finally felt like I found sort of where I fit in the world, where I belonged. But the unit administrator made it unbearable. She barked orders at people, she played favorites, and she ruled through fear. Her emotional outbursts created a culture of silence. And it was a dangerous workplace to begin with. Her behaviors made it even less safe. I did everything I could to just remain invisible. I kept my head down. I did my job. I didn't want to attract any attention. Have you ever worked in a place like that where the goal was to go unnoticed just to survive the day? Well, put a yes in the chat if you've ever encountered that type of leader. Well, this experience changed me. I kept wondering, why isn't anyone teaching her something different? Why is this acceptable? There had to be a better way to lead. This experience sparked a lifelong passion in me to understand what makes someone a truly great leader and how can we create workplaces where people actually want to show up, where they look forward to Mondays. Well, I went on a quest. I went on a quest and um, over the years read hundreds of articles and hundreds of books. I earned my MBA. I got a doctorate in leadership. And I studied for my dissertation, I studied the impact that leader behaviors have on the work environment. And I became a professional coach. I've written several books along the way to share what I had learned, including my publication on leadership titled Leading at the Speed of People. I even returned to work to healthcare as a director of nursing in behavioral health to apply what I had learned. And what happened? They handed me a set of keys and said, here you go, have at it. No training, no support, no leadership development, just, hey, you figure it out. Have you ever had been put in a role where the expectations were really high, but the support was low or non-existent? You can put your answer in the chat. It's no wonder with that so many leaders feel overwhelmed, underprepared, and burned out. And that's why I do this work. I help leaders just like you to stop surviving and start leading confidently, powerfully, intentionally, and with empathy, because you are certainly not alone. Leadership is not about having all the answers. It's about knowing how to show up. Well, this talk is for you if any of these feel familiar. Um, if you're struggling with confidence or feel like an imposter, You're navigating chaos, constant pressure, or unclear expectations. Maybe you avoid conflict or you overreact to it. You feel stuck, overwhelmed, exhausted. You want to build trust, improve engagement, and lead with influence, but you're not sure how. Now, you might be thinking, there's too much chaos and I can't get everyone on the same page. I'm trying so hard, but I feel like I'm just not getting anywhere. Hey, I avoid conflict, but it keeps blowing up in my face. If any of that sounds like you, then you are in the right place today. And here's what you'll discover. We'll be going over 3 principles for leading at the speed of people from my book and the course, which I'll tell you about later. You'll learn how to show up with confidence and lead with calm, how to align your team and create clarity in the chaos, how to build trust and connection that drives performance. Ultimately, your goal is to create a work environment where people don't just survive, but they actually enjoy work and they thrive. Because, yes, leadership can be learned, and we need to learn how to lead at the speed of people. Because you lead people, not things, not procedures, not budgets. You lead people, and people are messy. Leadership is a people's game. And that is the secret to being a magnetic leader. And if you want to if you want a shortcut to making this shift, I'll show you exactly how to keep applying these principles well beyond today at the end of when we're through. Ready to learn the first principle? Great. So in order to lead at the speed of people, you need to lead yourself. When you lead yourself, you become the compass that others can trust and that they look for direction, are watching you, whether you like it or not. Leading yourself means that you become intentional about how you show up. Leadership always starts from the inside. Before you can effectively lead others, you must first lead you. Let's give it this way. As the compass, your clarity, your calm, your vision, your values, these guide the direction of your team. And if you're spinning, others are going to spin with you. Your leadership will never exceed your leadership of yourself. You will treat others the way you treat yourself. And that's why leading yourself is so critical. Leading yourself means being self aware, knowing who you are, what you value, and how others experience you. It means regulating your emotions so you respond with intention, not reactivity. And it means being clear about how you want to show up and the impact that you want to have. This is the foundation of emotional intelligence. Now, in my first book, The Journey Called You, I focused on self awareness, knowing, accepting, and honoring yourself without judgment. That is often the hardest part of self awareness. In my book, Leading at the Speed of People, I build on this, emphasizing that to lead others, we start with how we lead ourselves. It's the precursor to empathy. You are the self study course for what it means to be human. And your life, well, it's your curriculum. When you lead yourself well, you can bring awareness, intention, and calm into the room, and that's what people follow. Now, what happens if you don't lead yourself well? Well, there is a cost. Without self leadership, you're unaware of the impact that you're having, and it's usually not very good. Remember that unit administrator I mentioned just a few minutes ago? Well, she didn't know. She had no idea how her energy and her behavior created chaos, fear, tension, turnover. I doubt she intended that impact. But she never took it upon herself to reflect or to learn. She never asked for feedback, and she never really learned how to manage herself well. And no one was coaching or developing her. So that kind of unexamined leadership creates chaos. People walk on eggshells, innovation disappears, and morale crumbles. Have you ever had to walk on eggshells around your leader? They won't trust you. If people fear you, they're spending time and energy trying to appease you, or at least not upset you. It's impossible to tap into people's genius if they're scared of how you'll react, if you'll steal their work or take their credit or criticize them. And this increases stress and friction at work, and it gets in the way of productivity and innovation and effectiveness. Often, leaders don't realize that they're the source of the very problems that they're trying to solve. Because they're so focused on outcomes or staying in control or keeping control, they don't see the emotional wake they're leaving behind them. If you are always busy, reactive, overwhelmed, and you're not leading, you're reacting and just surviving. When you're moving at 100 miles an hour, you don't reflect, you can't connect, and you can't grow. One of my coaching clients, a seasoned director, told me that in a previous role, she would literally run down the hallway between meetings. It was a point of pride for her. She felt important, needed, productive. But when a colleague mentioned how that looked to others, she brushed it off. She didn't want to hear it, and she wasn't ready to hear it. When we began working together, which was later in her career, she realized that, hey, that made her seem unapproachable and frantic, chaotic. She was so driven by that need to be useful and on all the time that she couldn't see how her presence created stress for others. Her husband used to tease her about not being able to sit still and relax. If she had 5 free minutes, she filled them with something to do. Can anybody relate? I certainly can. What's your answer in the chat? Well, she wore her busyness as a badge of honor, but under it, exhaustion, pressure, and emotional reactivity. Through coaching, she learned to slow down, delegate, and be more intentional with her energy and with what she said yes to. She's still a high performer, but now her leadership has presence. Her team feels the shift, and so does she. Self leadership is not about perfection, it's about awareness. If you don't know who you are or how you show up, it's hard to lead others. Self leadership means owning your energy, getting honest about your blind spots, and showing up with intention. Without it, you create chaos without realizing it. This is how you build confidence and become the leader that others want to work with and learn from. Now, let's take a moment to reflect. On a scale of 1 to 10, how effectively are you leading yourself? Your energy, your awareness, your presence? What would it take to shift just 1 point higher to become just a little more self aware? You don't have to admit anything in the chat. Just do this for yourself. All right, let's move to principle number 2. Once you lead yourself well, the next power principle for leading at the speed of people is communicating with clarity and calm, to be the signal. Because even best intentions can get lost in translation if you do not communicate effectively. Leadership is built on communication, not just the words you say, but how you say them, when you say them, and the energy behind them. Communication is your signal in the noise. It tells people what matters, where we're going, and how we'll get there, especially when things feel chaotic. Without a clear signal, people tune out, they drift, or they start guessing. Strong leaders, however, they set clear intentions and expectations and boundaries. They communicate their values and vision. They provide consistent feedback, both supportive and constructive, so people always know where they stand. They ask questions and they listen well. They speak with confidence and calm, even under pressure. They don't leave people guessing or let problems fester. They address issues early, they speak clearly, and they respond intentionally, not with emotion. Strong leaders master their message and they manage their moments, and their presence communicates just as much as their words. So, what happens when we don't communicate well? I mean, we communicate all the time, but we often get it wrong. Well, when leaders are not clear in their communication, communication breaks down, and so does trust. People get frustrated. People fill in the blanks with assumptions and they try to read between the lines, and more often than not, they get it wrong, which leads to confusion and misalignment. A reactive leader who lashes out, shuts down, or communicates inconsistently creates stress and fear. Stop speaking up. They tiptoe around conflict. They withhold information, or worse, they leave. Poor communication breeds stress, erodes trust, and makes even the simplest of tasks harder. It's not just what you say, it's how your presence makes people feel. One of my clients, a department head, um, came into coaching completely overwhelmed. She had been in her role for a couple of years, leading a team of professionals, but she felt like she wasn't getting anywhere. She kept trying to gain consensus, hoping everyone would agree. She treated her team like peers, and instead of leading them with a clear and compelling vision. So, why was this going on for her? Well, we unearthed that her biggest fear was being disliked. And that fear drove her actions. And the result was confusion, misalignment, and frustration. Everyone was pulling in different directions, and she was exhausted trying to hold it all together. Once we uncovered what was really going on, everything shifted. We clarified her values and her vision for the department, what she wanted to see happen. We reunited her with the purpose she had for taking this leadership role on in the first place. She stopped trying to be liked and she started leading with purpose. She communicated more directly. She set boundaries. She owned her authority. She ran meetings differently. She stopped asking for consensus and she started trusting herself and her instincts. In other words, she took her power back. And the change was palpable. Because she showed up differently, her team got more focused, more engaged, and became more productive. And she finally felt like she was leading. She stopped worrying about what others thought of her and instead focused on the vision that she had for the department and what was required of her to get the team there. Her stress level dropped, and that gave her more time and energy to work on the things that really mattered. Now, it didn't start with a communication tactic. It started with a mindset shift from self protection to service and from fear to clarity. When you create clarity, people engage, they produce, and they stay. So let's take a moment to reflect. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate the clarity and impact of your communication? Are you reacting or responding? Are people clear of what's expected of them, what you value, and how we work together around here? How might you make things clearer starting right now today? In order to lead at the speed of people, the third principle is to use empathy. Empathy is the bridge between you and others. When you lead yourself well and you communicate clearly, empathy is how you connect. And this is probably the most essential of all leadership skills, and we don't talk about it enough. It's also one of the most misunderstood leadership skills, often referred to as a soft skill. It is not soft, and it's certainly not about rescuing people or lowering standards. Empathy is about connection, curiosity, human understanding. It's a strength. In fact, it's your superpower. Empathy is the ability to see beyond behavior, caring about the person, and getting curious about what's really going on for them, to consider their perspective, not your assumptions about it, to separate your emotional reaction from their behaviors, to detach so you can respond thoughtfully, not emotionally. Think of empathy as the bridge between you and others. It allows you to cross into someone's world, not to rescue or fix, but to understand. People carry so much trauma and emotion. We never know what's going on for them. And when people feel understood, when they really feel heard, they open up, they settle down, and they step forward. When you detach, you create space. And when you get curious, you build trust. Curiosity without judgment creates safety. You remain neutral, unemotional, focusing on understanding what's going on for the other person. When you lead with empathy, people feel safe and cared about, and that unlocks performance. So, what happens when we are not empathetic, when we just are all business? Well, there are a lot of costs. Empathy starts with self awareness. So, if someone's behavior triggers you and you can't manage your own emotions, empathy disappears and judgment takes over. Reactivity happens, and that's when it gets messy. Without empathy, relationships suffer, and so does the work. We often will take things personally and we make it about us when we do that. They don't care. How dare they talk to me like that? They're so disrespectful. They don't care about this job. Again, that's all about me, right? We make a lot of assumptions, don't we? And those thoughts pull us out of leadership and into reactivity and defensiveness. Taking things personally pulls us into self focus, away from leading someone else, and it prevents you from seeing the human being behind that behavior. When you can't separate your emotions from a situation, you react. And you discipline before asking questions. You assume before you understand. Conflict escalates. Misunderstandings abound, resulting in bad feelings. And then you have to clean up the mess afterwards, which can be very difficult. And that's when trust breaks down. Good people start to check out. And trust can be a really tough thing to rebuild. Leadership is relationship. It's about influencing others to accomplish things, to be great, and to do their best work. Behavior speaks volumes. And we need the courage to ask the person, hey, what is going on for you? Ralph Waldo Emerson said, what you are speaks so loudly, I can't hear what you say. When people behave in ways that are outside of our expectations, we can get angry or we can get curious. Empathy allows you to pause before you judge. It creates the space to ask, what else could be true? And that one question changes everything. Empathy is meeting people where they are. During one of my Friday leadership training sessions, a senior manager shared that an employee had screamed down the hallway the day before. It was a healthcare setting. So patients and staff all witnessed this outburst. The manager was seeking some coaching from the group, and she said, I'm not looking forward to disciplining her on Monday. So I let the group ask her some questions first. I was hoping they would get curious, but they did what so many of us do. Oh gosh, I had a similar struggle. What are you going to do? Someone else said, oh, you should do XYZ. So I stopped the group for a moment and I asked a simple question. Is this typical behavior for this employee? The manager paused and said, no, actually, she's usually pretty great. Then I said, is she okay? And the whole room fell silent. Empathy invites us to check on the human first, not to excuse the behavior, but to understand it. So that day was a Friday. The manager called the employee, not to reprimand her, to talk about the event, but just to see how she was. And the employee broke down. She admitted that she and her husband were having difficulties. They were having a really rough time of things, and things had become unbearable. She didn't quite know how to ask for help. By Monday, they were able to have a very difficult a very different conversation. Yes, they addressed the behavior, of course, but they also created a plan to rebuild trust in her relationships with team members and patients. The manager was able to offer support and together they could move forward. Remember, if you have an outburst like that, you can only imagine that she's embarrassed. She has to, how she feels because she made this grave mistake. And the manager was now able to assist her in making things right again. That's leading at the speed of people. You become the bridge into their world by using empathy. So take a moment to reflect. When someone's behavior triggers you, what's your first instinct? To react, freeze? Do you fight or do you get curious? How willing are you to pause, detach, separate your emotions from their behavior, and ask, what's really going on here? So let's take a moment to review. We covered a lot of ground. What does it mean to lead at the speed of people? Well, we covered three principles today. The first of which is to lead yourself and be the compass. You are compass. It's just where are you leading people? Others will look to you for direction. To lead yourself first means showing up grounded, to display confidence, not reactivity. And when you're grounded in who you are and how you want to show up, you provide clarity, even when everything around you feels uncertain. Power principle number two was to communicate clearly and effectively, to be the signal in the noise. It means communicating with clarity so that others feel steady, not confused. Clear, purposeful communication cuts through the chaos and gives people the structure and guidance they need to move forward together. And power principle number three is to use empathy, to be the bridge that brings people together. When we lead with empathy, people feel seen, not small. Empathy is the bridge, it's your superpower. When you detach with compassion and get curious instead of judgmental or emotional, you create safety and invite connection. And that's when people thrive. That's how you build trust, that's how you build connection, and that's how you lead well. Now, these principles may sound simple, but they are game changers. And you may be wondering, well, how do I get started with all this stuff? This is great stuff. And that's why I'd like to give you a gift today, um, to discover how you show up and what's showing through. I'd like to offer you my leadership impact and influence assessment. This simple tool helps you to see how your leadership style influences others and where you can lead with greater impact. From there, you can identify growth opportunities and set some clear goals for yourself. If you share your email in the chat, I'll send it directly to you. One of my clients recently told me that that the assessment was eye-opening for them. It showed me exactly where my blind spots were, and for the first time, I felt like I had a roadmap to becoming the leader I want to be, which is such a great comment. Clients love this assessment because it helps them to focus on the areas where they experience the greatest pain points, whether that's confidence, communication, building trust, or managing conflict. It gives the starting point for real change. Now, if today's talk resonated with you and you're ready to go deeper, then I've created a self paced, comprehensive leadership course called Leading at the Speed of People. Inside, we build on the concepts that you learned today. You'll learn how to apply my care leadership model, which is a powerful framework built on communication, appreciation, respect, and empathy, which is the path to people centered leadership. You'll also learn essential skills that help people thrive and help you lead with clarity, confidence, and calm, like navigate how to navigate conflict and give feedback with confidence, communicate clearly with maximum impact, strengthen your emotional intelligence. You'll balance empathy with accountability. You'll build trust and create high performing teams and shape the legacy that you really want to leave. I've included 9 modules, 48 videos. There's 23 handouts and exercises, practical strategies that you can apply immediately to the context of your work. For those of you who are ready to start today, this Course gives you the tools to lead with confidence, empathy, and influence all at your own pace. It's designed to help you to stop burning out, stop second guessing yourself, and start enjoying leadership again or for the first time and create the environment where people thrive. Now, I could be selling this for thousands of dollars, but we've priced it at a nice price at $9.97. But today, you can get $50 off with the code capital GIFT 50. There's a 30-day money back guarantee if you're not completely satisfied, so it's risk free for you. And you can find the course on my website and at leadingatthespeedofpeople.com. If you're unsure whether the course is right for you or you have questions, maybe you take the assessment that I send you and you still have some questions, then I would love to offer a few um, complimentary leadership clarity sessions. Perhaps you just want personalized guidance on a leadership challenge you're facing. I'm happy to spend some time with you. If you send me an email at info@drjuliedonley.com with leadership clarity session in the subject line, I'll follow up with next steps. In closing, I just want to share one of my favorite quotes, which is by Maya Angelou. People will forget what you said, and they'll forget what you did, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. And that's the essence of people centered leadership, of leading at the speed of people, because leading is ultimately people's game. And that's what this is all about, how you make people feel, how you show up, how you lead, and how you feel about your leading. So if you're ready to lead with more clarity, connection, confidence, and calm, then I invite you to take the next step. Explore the course, learn the care leadership model and the other strategies I provide, build the kind of culture where people want to stay and grow. And if you have questions or want help navigating your own leadership challenges, feel free to email me for a complimentary leadership clarity session. I'm honored to help in any way I can. I want to thank you all for being here and choosing to lead at the speed of people. I will take questions at this time if I can access those. Um, please feel free to put those in the chat, and we'll see if I can answer any questions. Okay, so thank you all for coming. And again, you can always email me with more if you have any questions, info@drjuliedonley.com. Thank you all and have a wonderful day.